There is also something that happened, I think it was last week. Congressional candidate, 24 years old. He won the GOP nomination for Congress in the 11th congressional district over the GOP Trump-backed candidate. His name is Madison Cawthorn, and he is an 8th-generation resident in North Carolina's 11th congressional district, and he is joining us now. Madison, are you there?
I sure am, Glenn. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. I'm glad to have you. Let me just start with this. People are spinning this into this is a referendum on Donald Trump. I think this is a referendum on the GOP, not Donald Trump. Agree or disagree?
More correct. That's absolutely correct. I'd say over 99% of my voters will be enthusiastically voting for Donald Trump come in November. But what you said earlier about a lot of Americans not believing that the GOP has a spine is absolutely correct. I was in a terrible car accident about 7 years ago, so we would always joke on the campaign trails, like, if you want somebody with a spine, mine is literally reinforced with titanium. And, that got a big rise out of the crowd. But I believe that the reason people responded so well to it is because right now they want a fighter. It's not time for genteel politics. This is not a policy war. This is a culture war. We're fighting for the absolute identity of our country.
There is a need now in Washington of a sword and a shield. A shield over the Constitution and a sword to protect it. And hopefully we don't get to real swords or real guns. But with the way things are going, this nation could, if the GOP doesn't stand up, or if the GOP loses what little power they have, and we lose the White House, it's a very different country come January of next year.
Glenn, you're absolutely correct. And that's exactly what we need to do. We have got to hold the line on the Constitution. But you're right. We have got to put a sword in the hand of the American people. I want to go to Washington, D.C. to be a weapon, because at this point, we have got to defeat this liberal ideology. It's no longer a fringe movement of this kind of Marxist type revolution. This is an extremely well-funded and well-organized movement that is being led by women like AOC and Ilhan Omar, but also by a lot of ginormous backers who are taking advantage of the Citizens United case to be able to pour a ridiculous amount of money into all of these elections to fund, these fringe elements that infiltrate these Black Lives Matter movement. And they're using this tension we have in our country right now to be able to take advantage of the American people. I don't want to lose our liberties, and I know you don't either. So let's start fighting. And I think that's what the American people are saying. Yeah, it's not saying that we don't want you, Mr. President. We're saying we want you to have people who will actually fight for you.
So what do you think, what connected with the voter in North Carolina that was voting for you? Because you won the Trump-endorsed candidate. You were 30, if I'm not mistaken, 30 points ahead. And you're 24 years old. You're just, what was it that people connected?
Well, one, I've got a great story just about overcoming and having the grit and will to kind of survive. Two, I would say is, being in a wheelchair has taught me kind of empathy, the ability to see people that, have a different background than me and empathize with them and really understand the people who feel like they've been left behind and disenfranchised. And I'll tell you, that's exactly how a significant majority of Republican voters feel. They feel like these people in the kingdom of D.C. are up there just passing decrees. They're a bunch of career politicians. We saw this evidently in 2016 with that Congress because, we had the House and the Senate and the presidency. And I'm sure I watched your show during that time. I know you believed, like I did, that maybe, just maybe, we can see a constitutional republic come soaring back. But these career politicians that were in Washington, D.C. were not working for the best interest of the American people, and we did not see them take advantage of that. And so I think the people of America resonated most with the fact that, one, I want to be a messenger to fight for conservatism and take it to a new generation that's been deceived. And two, the fact that I represent the people of my mountains. This is where I was raised. This is my family. I will represent them and fight for them as hard as I can.
Tell me a little bit about how you lost the ability to walk.
So I just been nominated to go to the Naval Academy by Congressman Mark Meadows. My best friend and I were celebrating, and we were two Christian young men, so we were having the best time that we were able to with those boundaries. But so there was no drinking involved, there was nothing like that. But him and I were just on a road trip, middle of the day, and I was taking a nap in the passenger seat, and for whatever reason, my friend just thought it was a group activity, and so unfortunately, he fell asleep at the steering wheel. And we ran into a concrete wall about 70 miles an hour. And, I had about a 1% chance to live. My body was severely burned, very damaged. But you know what? I truly believe it was because of the power of prayer and God and my great doctors and my great medical staff that got me through that. But I was in a hospital for about a year and a month. And so that taught me a lot of lessons. It did.
How's your friend?
Thank God he is okay. He was a hero during the accident, and right now he is he's doing great. Obviously, he's got his mental demons he's got to deal with, but we're still very close, and he was pivotal in saving my life.
What was the thing that you learned the most from that? What was the thing that was the most life-changing for you?
I would say one day, I obviously got in a pretty dark place just because, I was an athlete. I had a great mind, but then you have a traumatic brain injury and a terrible, your body's taken from you. I got in a pretty dark place, but I will say that there was a moment in my life when I literally made a T-graph of pros and cons of if I was going to give up or if I was going to decide to just fight and not look back. And I won by 1 point on the continuing to move on with my life. And so ever since then, I've lived like it's like my last day on earth. I have a very real sense of my mortality. And so because of that, I want to make my mark before I leave this earth.
Do you remember what that last check mark was?
Yes, it was the ability to make a difference.
I can see why you won by 30 points. You are headed into a nightmare. You are headed into something where you compromise once and they gotcha. You're headed into something that you will, I believe, think death would be a picnic compared to living that life in Washington, D.C. Do you think you're prepared for that?
I do. I come from a very long line of family members who've served mainly in the Marine Corps since about the 1780s. So it's a great heritage I have of duty and sacrifice. But that's exactly how I see going to Congress. It's not a way to enrich myself or to empower myself. I see this as a duty to my fellow man. And so although I know the more effective I am, the more the media will come after me. And I'm ready for that. But unfortunately, I know that, because we won against the Donald Trump endorsement, we were kind of the media darling of the far right and also the far left. I was on MSNBC and The View, and, they treated me all right. It was unheard of for a Republican.
That's crazy.
You know what? I'm very, very aware that will not last. And so I'm getting ready to take on this onslaught because I don't want to do this. I would much rather, I just got engaged, much rather be focused on getting married and spending time with my wife. But you know what? I took account of where our country's at. And, as is normal for anybody that gets engaged, we were talking about when we want to have a family, what kind of a world they're going to live in. And, so I was thinking about that one night sitting outside, and I had this terrible vision of, my child, whether it's a boy or a girl, looking up to me while they're reading a history book and saying, "Hey, Dad, what was capitalism like? Why is it gone?" And I would just be so ashamed if I had to hold my head down and say, "Well, honey, it's because I didn't stand up and fight." And I think that's what needs to happen in our country. I just want to lead a patriot revolution to take our country back because, Glenn, I'm sure it's the exact same reason why you started The Blaze, why you have this show right here. It's because you realize that this is a battle for the hearts and minds of the future generations. And the Republicans are playing checkers while the Democrats are playing chess, and it's time for us to fight.
You give me hope. Sincerely, Madison, you give me hope. I've done this for a long time when you were a little kid, and I have been waiting for the generation to start to come into play. And And I thank you for that. And thank you for all that you're about to do.
Well, sir, thank you very much. I know that, well, I'll have at least a little bit of backup with guys like you helping fight back against this mainstream media. So I'm looking forward to fighting for us, and I won't let you down. I won't let any of us down.
Thanks. Has the president reached out to you?
Yes, that was a very fun phone call, actually. It was on the night of victory. I had a man named James who was working as the Air Force One switchboard. He called and asked if he could connect me to the president. So I very enthusiastically said yes. And, he used his normal adjectives. He was saying, it was tremendous. It was a beautiful victory. It seemed like he was almost amused that I was able to overcome his endorsement at this age. I mean, he was really, I would say, proud of me. And I'm really looking forward to working with him. He's having me come up to the White House in a couple weeks. And so I'm really looking forward to be able to be someone in Congress who actually wants to push forward the Trump agenda. I feel like we have so many people who just pay lip service but don't actually do it.
Well, push forward Trump agenda or whoever's agenda is most closely aligned with the Constitution, because you must be a sword and a shield for the Constitution, because it is in dire, dire trouble. And you strike me as the kind of young man that will take that oath very seriously. And don't let anyone. I've had people tell me before, really powerful people, Glenn, we all love the Constitution, but these are different times. No, they're not. No, they're not. The only time the Constitution matters is when it's easier to do something else. So stand for the Constitution. Madison, best of luck to you. And thank you so much for being on the program.
Actually, one last thing I just want to throw out. Everyone, please, when you read the Constitution, read it through the lens of original intent. This is what our founders wanted for us, and there's nothing new under the sun. So let's push back against that, brother.
His last words were not to push his website, so I have to do it now. His website is Madison, C-A-W Thorn, MadisonCawthorn.com, MadisonCawthorn.com. Thank you so much, Madison.